Hi and welcome to this video where I'm now inside the Mini. So I thought it was probably time to have a look at the fuel tank and what's going on inside it. So in this video we'll be removing these two hatches and revealing these. Now one's got electrical connected to it and this one's got a pipe connected to it. Now, as far as I'm aware, this one has a fuel pump in it and also a level sensor, and it sends the fuel over to this side because it's a saddle tank, and there's also another fuel level sensor in this side, and then I believe there's a filter in there, and the fuel was then sent to the fuel rail on the engine. So it seems to be quite a complex sort of situation of the fuel coming in this side, going into this side, then going over to that side, and all that rest of it. So to remove these, I'll be using this tool, which locks on like that so that we can undo it. So hopefully what I'll do in this video is to remove both of these, and we'll have a look at them on a bench and see what's sort of going on. So that's basically what this video is about, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. Many thanks for watching.
So the pipe from the filter to the fuel rail is likely to be under pressure, so before disconnecting from the fuel tank we best depressurise the pipe. So a quick way of doing this is just to remove fuse 20, which is down here in the passenger footwell. If we just take fuse 20 out, which is actually 20 amps, it's the yellow one. There it is. Just pop that one out, and then what we can do is actually start the engine, and that should depressurise the fuel system. So let's start her up, and she quickly dies. So just double check that. Yep, so that's the fuel pressure depressurised. So what we also need is a fire extinguisher on hand, because we are going to be messing around with the petrol side of things, and there's a lot of fuel vapours. So the fuel tank needs to be empty for safety. Also be aware of the fume hazard once the hatches are open in an enclosed space. I'm also disconnecting the battery for extra safety. So this is probably a wise precaution, because you certainly don't want sparks near the fuel tank when we start playing with the fuel pump. So just disconnect the earth lead, or the negative side of the battery, with a 10mm socket, and make sure it's pushed to one side, like so. Okay then, now to remove the rear passenger lower seat cushion. So here's a quick photo showing how the seat is actually held in position on a spring clip. So it's easy enough just to pull the side up where the yellow tape is. And there we are. That then reveals the two metal hatches, which we're going to have to remove. So this is the spring clip. So it's a simple just push up and push down. So we can get that out of the way now and have a look at these hatches. So you will note that I've actually removed the driver's seat and passenger seat just to give me better access. Okay, now to remove the rear black covers. So here's a quick photo showing those two covers and the 5 nuts that secure each one. So for this it's a 10mm socket. They're not very tight, and we just need to remove the 5 nuts from each of the covers. Let's speed this up and see what's underneath. So there's the fuel tank under there, and we can see an electrical connection on that side. because that's the fuel pump side. So if we go over to the fuel filter side now, and there should be just a single pipe coming off this, which is the fuel pipe leading to the actual engine. And there it is. That's the single fuel pipe. So, our next job is to now remove the fuel pump using the Laser 7107 locking ring tool. And just before we do that, I have a couple of photos here, just so that we can get acquainted with what's actually down here, and the electrical connections, and also the tool when it's in position. Right then, so back into the car. So the first thing to do is going to be to disconnect the electrical connection. But what I'm going to do is, just as a safety precaution, is just to mark where the lock ring is in relation to the body of the car. So you could either use yellow paint or perhaps a permanent marker, like so. That way, at least, if you can't torque it up correctly or you haven't got the right tool, you know that you've got to try and get that ring back into that position. So if you don't have the tool, one method would be to use something like a punch and very carefully tap it and undo it that way. But if you've got the tool, it is a bit easier, because this just slots on there. So this is the 7107 one. There's a few variations of this. So we just remove that connector first. So that's 6 pins there. So 2 for the fuel pump, and there's 4 for the level sensors, because there's a level sensor on each side. Okay, so let's undo this. So that wasn't too bad. And the only thing is, once this comes open, there probably will be quite a lot of petrol fumes, so you probably just want to bear that in mind. There's the little tab that lines up the pump housing. I was quite surprised at how much was going on in here. I thought this was going to just lift straight out, and there's quite a bit going on inside this tank. So the fumes were very overwhelming, so I resorted to a full face mask with organic filters, as I was in an enclosed space within the garage. I also was concerned about the risk of a flashover. So before we start, we'll have a quick heads up on what's actually inside this fuel tank. So this is what we're actually looking at, and there's 2 pipes there and a cable that go over to the other side, because the tank is like a saddle tank. So we've got to disconnect 2 pipes and 1 electrical connector, and this is what it actually looks like when it's in the tank. So just so you know what you're dealing with, we're starting here with the fuel pump, which is on the right hand side. So I can't deny this actually took me quite a while. There was a lot of faffing around going on here. So what I found was, it's probably easier just to remove the rubber ring first, get that out of the way. So as you can see, I've got the full mask on there, makes life a lot easier. Disconnect the fuel pipe, so that's from the pump, and then get that pipe out of the way, which goes over to the filter side. Disconnect the connector there, that's for the fuel level from the other side. And then we just need to pull off the Syphon pipe rather, which is the grey one. Just lift that up and out. So now technically everything's free. So it's now just a case of trying to wiggle everything around, making sure you don't damage the metal arm of the float. You'll see that as it comes out now. So So you've got that metal arm there, so that's quite delicate. And there was quite a bit of petrol there still floating around. So I was quite glad for the mask. Right, so that's one side out, that's the fuel pump. I'll just cover that up again. I don't really want fumes to start building up inside the car. So I'll just get this part out of the way because it's obviously covered in petrol. And then we can go on to removing the fuel filter housing, which also includes the Syphon jet pump. So again, we'll have a quick heads up on what the fuel filter side looks like. So there's the float, and you can also see another metal bar going to the Syphon pump. So this one's going to be quite awkward to actually get out because we've also got the pipes leading over to the pump side. So a lot going on. Alright, so at least you know now what's inside the tank. So back in again. So the first job here is to disconnect the fuel pipes. Let's just simply push it in with a couple of pliers, or with a pair of pliers rather, and then pull it back out. This is why we depressurize the system, because that could have possibly squirted petrol everywhere as we did that. So again, I feel a lot happier with a full face mask on, so hopefully I won't get petrol in my face. So again, I'm just going to mark it like so. So this tool definitely makes this a lot easier to do. And looking at the price of some of the other tools, it's actually quite a cheap option of £50. Because the next one up is like £70, and then the BMW one I think is like £150. So it is a useful tool to have, I suppose. Right then, so here we go. So there's the little tag again that we need to line up. So we'll start by removing this rubber seal. Obviously make sure you don't damage that or tear it. Could be quite disastrous. Now I was faffing around with this for ages trying to get this out. Because you try and lift it up, but you've got these pipes going over to the other side. And the grey Syphon pipe is actually quite a large pipe. So as you can see, in the end I just had to sort of kink it. I didn't want to kink this pipe, but really didn't seem much option. So there's the main pipe coming from the fuel pump, and we've still got the Syphon pipe, which is that one there. So in the end I did kink that to get it out. So there's quite a lot inside these tanks. It's not like in the old days when you only had a little pump or a little float level sensor. There's definitely a lot more going on in later cars. Right, we'll get that out of the way. So that's what they look like, sort of in position but inside the tank. So you can see the float sensor there, like the variable resistor, and there's the one on the other side as well. So I was wondering how much fuel the pump didn't pick up when I drained the tank. So I thought obviously I want this fuel out, so that when I come to put them back in I don't really want a tank full of vapour. Because petrol is pretty dangerous, especially in vapour form. So while I was making the video, this could have been evaporating quite nicely and pose quite a considerable explosive risk. So there's more petrol in there than I actually thought. So because you can see there is actually a fair bit in there, and that was when the tank was run dry in the previous video. Squared a bit all around the car as well there. You'll also note that the soundproof matting there is made of tar, and if you get petrol on it, the petrol quite happily eats away at it. So if you can avoid getting petrol on those tar patches, it might be better. Right then, so I'll just check now inside the tank, make sure we're actually empty. I'll actually put my phone in there in a minute so we can actually have a look around inside the tank. So we just measure it. So there was 3/4 of a litre of remaining fuel, which actually looks somewhat dirty. So what I think I'll do is I'll just put a piece of tissue in there to help aid filtering that back into the can. The tank was fairly clean considering. Right then, so taking a look inside the fuel tank, and I had to use my phone for this. So here goes, here's our little trip inside a fuel tank. We start with the pump side and where the fuel enters the tank, which is there. So that's the entrance or the exit from the fuel filler, and here we can see the drain valve, and there's the vent valve for the charcoal filter. And then if we pop over to the other side, we also have another drain valve there as we go in. So that's from the charcoal filter or the evaporation system. So you can see the sort of saddle part of the tank. So the exhaust pipe's running underneath that. So that's what inside the tank looks like. Right then, so testing the level sensors with a multimeter to see their resistance for full and empty. So with our meter at hand, now we'll pop a couple of probes on here and see what we get. So we're starting at 20.3 ohms with it empty, and then as the tank fills up to maximum, we've got 300.3. So we've got about, it's reading basically 280 ohms from start to finish, or it's covering that resistance range. Right then, so that was the fuel pump side. So we'll go over to the fuel filter side and see if we get the same again, just out of interest. 20.6, so it's basically 20. And again we get up to 300 ohms basically. So yeah, so there's like a 280 ohm difference there. Okay, so can I open the fuel filter housing? So I did give this a pretty good attempt, I think. I found a method of actually undoing these clips at the top. So if you push down with a couple of the ends of a long nose pliers, you can very carefully get that to clip out. Don't want to break it. There we go. And you can do that for the other three. Now logically it would just have a rubber seal at the top, which I thought would just pull away. But I did try and persevere with this because I really would like to have seen what this filter looks like. So there is some clips at the bottom as well to release the filter from the bottom section.
I don't think that comes off.
Well, I thought we'd start with the top. Like I said, I did actually undo them all, and the plastic was doing a lot of squeaking, so it's obviously very dry. Because it's obviously been in a bath of petrol. I wasn't quite sure how brittle the plastic would actually be, so I did try to sort of lever it, and as you can hear it's squeaking away And in the end I just sort of shied away and thought, well, I'm likely to break this and then I won't be able to start the car again. So unfortunately on that one I didn't remove the fuel filter. You probably could if you wish to pursue it, but not for me. So now to refit the fuel pump and filter with all that cross piping going on. Okay then, so I wasn't actually looking forward to this part. At least I didn't have the fumes from the tank now. The tanks were actually nice and empty and fume free, which was something quite nice. So I really didn't want to bend those pipes. So I thought, well, if I could try and get the two pipes and the cable over to the other side, like so, could I somehow get those back in there, that siphon pump? And that wasn't going to work. No, you can't bend that. No. So it seems to have to go in that way. But then obviously you've got the pipes all in the air. So it's almost like you can't avoid kinking them unless you actually connected them to the siphon pump when it was already in there. I'm having that. I've already tried that, didn't work. No, there's no option here but to actually bend the pipe. Just go for it. Yeah, you've got to have to bend it. But you haven't got any space to actually put your hands. So it's a real awkward situation. If anyone knows how you're supposed to actually fit this, please leave a message in the comments. Because I'm sure you should be able to fit this without kinking that grey pipe. Right, so we're actually getting it in there now. Like I say, you don't want to hit the float sensor because that would be easily damaged. Right, so once that's in, you've now obviously got the job of trying to get those pipes over to the other side. I actually sped that part up because I was having to put my hand in the tank to put it over. Alright, so I'm going to put a little bit of silicone grease on these rubber seals just to make sure that they actually all seat in properly. I did consider using red rubber grease, but I think silicone grease is actually supposed to increase the life of rubber. Right, so we've got to get our lug in there. Just line that up, push it in, like so. At least that one stays. The other one tends to push itself back up. It's on quite a strong spring. So I just need to torque that. So we'll go over to the pump side. So I've lost the pipes again. Right, so there they are. Right. The problem is now, as soon as I put my pump in there, I'm going to lose the pipes again. Right, so there's our pump in there. Right, now how do you get the pipes? Because you can't get your hand back in. It's extremely awkward. Right, so I started with the grey siphon pipe. I popped that on first because that's just push into position, and then I got the actual fuel pipe that goes to the other side, push that into the quick release connector, then the connector block for the fuel level sensor on the filter side, and in theory that's everything connected. So it should be a case of just carefully pop it back into the tank. Again, I'm just going to pop a little bit of silicone grease on the seal, like so. Carefully pop that over. So line that up. So there's quite a strong spring on this one. It will keep trying to spring back up. So you sort of need to push it down, get the lug located. As you see, it just jumps straight back up again. So push it down, then try and get that ring threaded. Like I said, it is easier with this tool. And then we tighten that to 35 Newton meters, which isn't very tight. So it actually clicked earlier than the paint marks lined up, as you can see, like that. It's just a case of pop our electrical connection on now. That also seemed quite tight. The wiring for that seemed extremely tight. So just push it down, push the locking lever over. Just checking there it's actually locked. There we are. And then we can put the hatch back on. Make sure you put it the right way around. And then obviously put the 5 nuts back on. So we'll go over to the other side now. We'll just torque this to 35. So it actually clicked, like I said, a bit early. Yeah, it's clicked already. So I did just sort of snug it round so they lined up with my paint marks. So then we just need to pop the fuel pipe back on with its quick release connector. Like so, make sure that's clipped in nicely. And then again put the cover back on. So you probably don't really need to torque these up to the 6 Newton meters. Well, we will anyway because the manual says so. It's obviously just very gentle. Like so. You can see that the petrol actually made quite a mess of those tar soundproofing sheets. It was eating away at those quite nicely. Right then, so just tuck our carpet back underneath. And then we can just refit the lower seat cushion, reconnect the battery, refill with some fuel, and see if the Mini starts. Okay, so I've put my 2 back seats back in now, just to show this correctly. So there we are, so we just pop our seat underneath, make sure we put the seat belts clips in, tuck the carpet in there, and it should just sit in like that. Okay then, so we'll reconnect the battery now. Like so. So that's a 10mm socket, and technically that's 5 Newton meters. So that's not very tight at all. Put the sealing strip back on. Just checking it over again. And then what we'll do is put some fuel in. Because obviously it would be easier if the car drives out of the garage, as opposed to me having to push it. So hopefully it's going to start after all that messing around. Let's see what happens. Pump's coming on. Oh, nearly started. There we go. It's one thing with these Minis, they do seem to start really easily. There you go, that seems happy. So how does the fuel system work? And please don't quote me on this, So as far as I know, the Mini has a saddle type tank, so fuel has to be transferred using a siphon pump mounted in the right hand side, which also contains the fuel filter. Fuel comes in through the filler neck into the left side. The fuel pump is also in the left and pumps the fuel over to the right hand side and through a fuel pressure regulator mounted on the filter housing. The regulator maintains 50 psi or 3.5 bar pressure, and excess fuel is passed back to the left side via the siphon jet. My Mini has a non-replaceable metal fuel filter, but some models, or possibly later models, had a paper replaceable filter similar in appearance to the oil filter. And now for some reference photographs. So if we start with the fuel pump and some of the connections going to it. So here is a photo showing all those different connections, and also how you would actually test for the pump and the voltage, and the details of that shown below. And here's the connection to the top of the fuel pump, and there's a close-up of that showing the numbers, so you can see the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. So here we can see the fuel pump and our float there. And there we've included the filter in this angle, so you can see those pipes going across to the other side. So here's the pump again, showing some of the pipe work, like so. And there again is that pipe work as it's on its way over to the fuel filter. So coming over to the fuel filter, we can see that siphon jet pump, the float, and we've got some various pipes there going to the bottom of the filter. So here's another angle showing that fuel filter and the siphon jet. And in this one we can see the float resistive track there. Now we're back on the underside of the siphon jet, showing the where it sucks the fuel up. So I'm assuming this is what actually happens here with the arrows that I've put on there. Again, now we're on the top of the pump, showing the pipes. And there I'm just showing you the fuel flow over to the other side, and that's the strainer underneath the pump. Sadly, a bit of a blurred photo there of the resistive track, noticing that says Audi on it, Volkswagen and Seat. So here's the fuel pressure regulator on the filter housing, and again the resistive track, and that is the regulator there. I think you can see part of the spring in there. Another angle there showing that, so you can see the numbers on it. And then again there's the resistive track there on the fuel filter side, and another photo of that. Alright then, so you've been watching removing fuel pump and fuel filter on a 2001 MINI R50, and thank you for watching, and I hope this video helps you service and maintain your car within your budget. This video was filmed and edited by me, Mark Savage, in February 2022, and I can be found on Instagram and Facebook as Coats and Gaiters.